If you ever want to know what real chaos looks like, picture this. A security camera paused. Right at the moment a bolt cutter chews through your fence, the trespasser holding a champagne flute in her other hand like she just won a prize. That was Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of our HOA, and watching her on my screen laughing hair all perfect, waving her guests through the gap in my reinforced bull fence. "Yeah, that'll knock the wind out of you," she said. "Nobody uses this dumb field anyway. Might as well put it to good use," before tossing her hair and ushering everyone in like she owned the place. She had no clue that fence wasn't just decoration. It kept 3 trained bulls from turning the neighborhood into a stampede. And now she was hosting what was turning into the HOA Gala of the Year with a live DJ, kids running wild and power cords plugged straight into my emergency backup. I was still in my barn office coming off a weekend in Amarillo, running bull safety demos for law enforcement, trying to convince myself I wasn't hallucinating from exhaustion. Diesel riot control trained Tango crowd avoidance specialist and bruiser. Well, you can guess why he's called that. They were in there behind triple gates and hot wire, not for show, but because a single mistake could end with headlines and lawsuits. And here was Karen, bolt cutters in hand, thinking my pasture was an event venue. For a second, I just watched her dance across the boundary like she hadn't a care in the world. No permit, no invitation, not even the decency to call. But then on the screen, I spotted a kid 7, maybe 8, chasing a balloon right up to the inner bull gate. My stomach dropped. That was not a gate you tested. These bulls, trained as they are, react fast to sudden moves or loud noises. Kids playing tag look a lot like a threat to them. I tore out of my office and sprinted toward the barn, boots pounding dirt, already running through worst-case scenarios in my head. No time to call the sheriff. I just needed to make sure the animals were calm, reinforce the gate if I could. As I neared the barn, I could hear Tango snorting and Bruiser shifting his weight, getting worked up by the commotion. Inside, Diesel was by the gate, alert, waiting. Bulls aren't dumb, they know when the routine changes. I checked the reinforced lock, noticed someone had tried to open it, found smashed strawberries on the ground like they'd tried to bait the animals. I was still cursing under my breath when the control panel flashed an alert: auxiliary generator engaged, power rerouted. Somebody'd plugged into my backup, probably the DJ with all those lights, and overloaded the system. The electrified fence that was supposed to keep the bulls in, completely dead. Now all that stood between Diesel and Karen's party was a single latch. I grabbed my whistle, the signal remote, and a bag of training pellets and bolted for the field. Diesel was already through the gate, not charging, just sniffing, curious. The party crowd didn't even notice him at first, too busy with selfies and string lights. Karen was up front with 2 realtors and some councilmen giving a toast about turning my neglected land into a park. Yeah, my land, my fence, my bulls, her personal open house. A few guests pointed at Diesel, thinking he was part of the show, and then a little girl actually started to walk up and pet him. Diesel snorted, shook his head, and stomped a sound that says, "Back up now." Some folks listened, some didn't. Karen finally saw him, gasped, then snapped right back into Queen Bee mode and grabbed the mic. "Everybody calm down. It's all part of the show." Mason, my dear neighbor, brought out his charming bull. Charming, she says, about a 2,000-pound animal trained for riot control. You know what I mean? I stepped out, blew the whistle a sharp high note. Diesel's ears flicked. He froze. Another whistle longer. He backed up, Bruiser and Tango right behind him, waiting for command. If anyone made a wrong move, that fragile piece could have shattered. Meanwhile, Karen's going, "Look how obedient they are." I'm thinking of getting one myself, better than a guard dog. Some guests edged for the exit. The DJ, clueless, played an EDM remix. That's when Diesel started moving right for Karen. Not charging, but with purpose, head down like a tank. She tried to laugh it off. Okay, Mason, joke's over, but Diesel kept coming, sniffed the table, then swept the whole champagne tower onto the ground. Glass, food, chaos. Karen fell into her own buffet table, shrieking. I blew the command 3 times. Diesel stopped Tango, and Bruiser flanked him, triangle formation. I walked over, calm as I could, and gave Karen a look I hope she'll remember till her dying day. "You trespassed. You cut my fence. You put kids in danger. And you're lucky these bulls respect my whistle more than you respect other people's property." With that, I led the bulls back to the barn in dead silence, but I already knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the kind to let things go. Sure enough, before I'd even latched the gate, I heard her heels clacking down the gravel. There she was, white dress, ruined one shoe in hand, mascara streaked more from humiliation than tears. "You endangered my guests!" she shrieked, jabbing her shoe at me like it was a subpoena. I just blinked, trying to process the entitlement. She cut through my security system, invited 100 people onto my land, and somehow I was the bad guy. The party was breaking up fast, DJ packing up guests, looking back, waiting for the fireworks. "I'll be filing a full complaint with the HOA about your outrageous behavior," she shouted, and I couldn't help but laugh. "After you cut my fence, plugged into my power, and put children next to trained security bulls. Good luck," she snapped. "They're just animals." "Yeah, Karen, and they were secure until you broke in." I pointed at the decorations still fluttering through the hole she'd made. "If Diesel had charged, you'd be picking food out of your hair for a year if you were lucky." She went pale but wouldn't back down. "You should have warned the HOA," she snapped. "How were we supposed to know you kept killer cows next door?" I just shook my head. "They're bulls and they're pros, more trained than anyone cleaning up after this disaster." That mention of lawsuits made her blink, and that's when one of her guests, tall guy lost his tie somewhere, stepped up. "Karen, you said you had permission to use the land?" She flinched. "Well, Mason and I are cordial, and the land's not being used, so—" I folded my arms. "That decorative land is a federal livestock certification site, Karen. These bulls are trained for security drills. You just held a wine party next to a Homeland Security asset." She tried to play it off, but when I showed her a picture of me and Diesel at a government expo, even the councilman started backing away. "I think I need to call my office," he muttered. And people started packing up faster than you can say bad idea. Karen, though, turned on me, hissing, "You set me up." I shook my head. "You set yourself up when you brought bolt cutters to a barnyard." She stormed off, and I spent the next hour resetting locks, calming bulls, reviewing camera angles just in case she tried to spin it. By the next morning, the whole neighborhood had seen the viral video, slow-motion Diesel tipping the champagne tower, Karen landing face first in potato salad. The comments roasted her, dubbed her Champagne Stampede and Fence Cutter Supreme. Officer Gaines from the sheriff's office even called "That bull deserves a badge" Mason. "You pressing charges?" I told him not yet, let's see what Karen tries next. Because if I knew anything, it was that she wouldn't quit. She doubled down, filed a formal complaint, accusing me of creating an unsafe environment, claimed her guests thought the bulls were lawn ornaments until they moved. My insurance company got a complaint too, but the rep just laughed, said my animals acted better than the humans and they weren't paying out. It kept escalating. Karen showed up at the sheriff's office, tried to file criminal charges against me for orchestrating intimidation tactics with my bulls. Gaines said his deputy nearly lost it laughing. She started leaving flyers about livestock-related risks, harassed neighbors about their fences, tried to rally the HOA, but most of them wouldn't even show up to her emergency meetings. One board member quietly told me they were preparing a vote to remove her. Meanwhile, a local morning show wanted to film the bulls for a community segment. They nailed it, calling Diesel the classiest bull in America. My property, once ignored, became a symbol of safety and animal welfare, and Karen's story started to unravel. Someone even leaked her email showing she'd tried to get reimbursed for the party using HOA funds. That was it. The board called a vote. At the meeting, the whole neighborhood showed up. Someone in the back shouted, "Community doesn't bring bolt cutters," and Karen's excuses fell flat. She was out just like that. I thought it'd be over, but no, Karen started sending me fake legal threats, photos of my bulls with red X's on them, all anonymously. I wasn't going to let her pull me down to her level. Instead, I hosted a public demo, invited everyone, neighbors, council, the press. The bulls performed their routines like clockwork. The crowd was blown away, and the highlight was naming the new training area the Karen Containment Zone. The board even made it official. Karen became the neighborhood punchline, not out of spite, but because she earned it. One afternoon, Karen showed up at my gate. She looked like someone forced to apologize before dessert. She said I came to clear the air. I let her talk. She admitted she'd gone too far, lost her position, her clients, her committees. I told her this wasn't just a mistake, it was a string of choices, and you can't blame the consequences. She wanted to know if the jokes and the mockery would ever stop. Not up to me, I shrugged. You made yourself the main character, Karen. She walked away for once, looking smaller, like she finally understood how far she'd fallen. Life settled down after that. The bulls became minor celebrities. I was invited to teach safety at HOA meetings, imagine that. The mayor called, said the town wanted to honor me for turning a feud into a public service. At the ceremony, Diesel wore a blue ribbon and blinked at the cameras while I accepted the award. I spotted Karen in the back, arms crossed, not angry, just quiet. Maybe regretful. Maybe just tired. She disappeared before I could say anything. Standing there in the sunset, watching the land I'd fought for, the bulls I'd raised, I couldn't help but feel a kind of gratitude. Karen tried to tear me down, but all she did was give me a story, a legacy, and a lesson to share. Sometimes respect comes down to knowing your boundaries, literal and personal. And if you're wondering how you really shut down a party, well, patience, poise, and 3,000 pounds of poetic justice goes a long way. So tell me, where do you stand? Was it justice overkill or just a long overdue lesson in respecting your neighbors? Let's hear it in the comments, because one thing's for sure, this story's not fading out anytime soon.